So I wanted to talk about self-love a little bit and how that relates with non-duality and there being no self. I think at some point I got confused that myself was some sort of inappropriate topic, that it was some certain topic that was off limits or illegitimate somehow. That's not what's meant by no self. What's meant by no self is essentially when you're thinking a thought about yourself that feels really bad, that self isn't actual, and you can drop that thought. It doesn't mean that you are some off limits subject and you can appreciate everything, the birds, the sky, the trees, but nothing associated with yourself. That again would be assuming some sort of separate self that's off limits because it's separate. So self-love remains a very powerful practice. And meditation and sitting with oneself really shows us how we are loving ourselves or how we are failing to love ourselves, because ourselves are that presence and that awareness. So if we're having a lot of pattern thoughts that are kind of stuck in negative emotions, stuck in pessimism or discouragement or whatever thought that feels bad, we may believe that we need all kinds of activities and we need all kinds of entertainment and we need all kinds of things in order to avoid those feelings. I also don't want to say that distractions are always bad, because distractions can stop some momentum from building on subjects sometimes. And other times they stop the momentum of really clearing out something. And so you know by how it feels. There's no wrong or rights with this. And I think that's the main message I want to get across, is that the self is not wrong. Believing in a self is not wrong. It's just when you assume that separation in some way that feels lacking, there will be emotional discord, which is suffering. And that's essentially all it means. And it's a way to totally cut through. If you haven't experienced this yet, this is where it is when you start thinking thoughts and making assumptions about yourself that feel really awful, just realizing, oh, that's a thought. That self is like totally fluid. It's not even a thing. And that this thought is assuming, this like fluid thought is assuming that it's this solid material thing and it is the way that it is, and it's not. And just feeling the utter relief of letting that go. That's all that's meant by there's no you. And yes, it's profound. Sometimes there's funny little ways that we can kind of see how we're holding ourselves to some sort of strange standard, and therefore like identifying and perpetuating some kind of expectations for ourselves. If you catch yourself or you ask yourself this question, would I expect my friend to do this? Would I expect this of my friend? Or would I speak to my friend this way? That can be a really powerful way to step back into that self-love, because you love that friend. You want what's best for that friend. And yet in the identification with ourselves, we expect ourselves to be some kind of perfection or whatever so often. It also could be the flip side, that we expect more of others and we expect less of ourselves. There's no one way this may come out, which is why pointing to the feeling is the most direct way of saying it. I just being creative and kind of imagining different stuff to help with patterns in my life that didn't feel so great. I realized that when I clean the house, there would be a lot of just resistance and a lot of resistance that came out of thoughts that weren't really clearly formed or expressed when I was thinking them, but were kind of like stuck there somehow, about me failing and me not doing better, or me being frustrated with my family, or just all kinds of things that would come up while I was cleaning. Basically, a dissatisfaction with the house the way it was as I was trying to effort my way into changing it. And that's always that's always not going to feel good, and that's always a problem. So what I did is I sort of pretended that I was hired help, and I was hired for an hour, and I didn't care how much I got done. I didn't care what the state of anything was. I was just there to help these people and to get my imaginary money for this set amount of time. And it completely cut through all the identification with it being my house and it being my job to clean. It's kind of a funny exercise to do things this way, because it cuts through that identification, and then you can see what I'm talking about and how the identification is often like holding the suffering there. It's funny, as much as we harp on there being not two, how sometimes when you intentionally imagine that there are two, and you do writing, automatic writing, where you're writing to your imagined higher self or something like that, that you realize what's meant by self-love, and in that love and in that non-resistance, you see what's meant by there not being two. I recently took a Reiki 2 class, and I was told to practice Reiki 2 to myself for 21 days, which I did. And the first Reiki class is hands-on, and second Reiki class is distance Reiki. So you're imagining yourself and you're sending yourself Reiki. Imagining like the image of yourself, or however you feel best doing it. That was exactly what I'm talking about. Imagining that there were two of me, that there was one that was healing and one that was being healed, was really, really helpful in bringing to light ways that I just was like continuing to push myself or expect myself to be somewhere I wasn't. And one of the most amazing things about Reiki, and just taking a Reiki 1 class, is when you're treating others, and the way I did Reiki was Reiki 1 was a lot more hands-on in treating others, and Reiki 2 was more of I also treated others, but the practice after that was more to myself. When I noticed when I was treating others that I had the best of intentions, it was very easy to have the best of intentions. And what came up was thoughts of just like discomfort of like touching a person, or what do they think, or are they uncomfortable, or something like that. But my intentions for them, it was very clear for healing. But when it came to self Reiki, what came in more than that pure intention and like totally being okay with how they were and holding the space and sinking into the vibration, the meditation, and the allowance of that flow, the tendency to, oh, this hurts and I want it to get better, like it needs to be better, the tendency to try to labor something into being rather than be with it, missing that that's the actual healing, was so clear. And I highly recommend Reiki classes, and especially if you've watched like a lot of non-duality and stuff, there will be stuff that comes up, but none of this is in conflict. That is essentially what non-duality is meant to show, and show you the freedom that this whole world and all the realms of spirituality and all the realms of exploring what we really are open, like the walls have come down. that was the predominant feeling, I think, when I first like recognized that there wasn't a me. It's like, holy cow, like free to love, free to explore, free to, it's just all for you. It is so good to be outside in the fresh air. It's like 40 degrees. It feels amazing. It's usually a lot colder. So the last thing that I wanted to say is that self-love is not something that you need to do. Again, just in the like putting my hands on a place in my body that hurts and just being like, go away, pain, as in that is not, there's no exclusion, non-duality, no exclusion. We can't push it away. It's all if we try to push it away, we think it, and the feeling, the body is responding to everything we think and becoming everything we think in a way. So we can't exclude anything, but just like conceptualizing self-love as a practice that we must do until we become like whatever. No, you don't have to do any self-love whatsoever. It just already is the case, and there's a lot of really beautiful practices that help to kind of like peel away the clouds and show you that's what you already are. It's all self and it's all love. So it doesn't matter where we put our focus of appreciation. It's all self-love. If I appreciate this tree, it's self-love because there is no separation. Anything I appreciate. So if you're in some sort of funk where, not that you can be in a funk, but if you're in some sort of a funk that you are really, really not appreciating the subject of yourself, finding anything to appreciate is also self-love. But, as I said earlier, it's not like some off-limit subject whatsoever. Because there are no limits. That's the message. And the self is made of a construct, ideas of limits, and those aren't actual. You're making them.